Hi everybody, welcome back. I'm now here with Audrey Greenberg to dig into her behind the eight ball story, again for IBTV and IB Communications. For those of you who might not have seen the first interview that I've just done with Kathy High, behind the eight ball is really an exploration into stories and experiences of failure, how we may have learned lessons from those experiences, and then really what inspires us to move forward following those significant experiences from our career histories. So, Audrey, before we kick off this session of failure,
yes,
what brought you into this space? Like, what does that kind of career journey look like for you?
Yes, great question, because everyone always asks, how did you get into this space? Because they look at my background and it's very unusual and unique. I started my career really in accounting of all things, and then worked in investment banking before and after business school. I then worked in private equity for about 10 years. And that was mostly in real estate with some services and operating companies. I moved to Philadelphia about 10 years ago with a 4-year-old, a 3-year-old, and 8 months pregnant. I was doing interim executive work and became aware that someone I knew from New York was buying the legacy GlaxoSmithKline R&D headquarters, and originally had planned to transition into a fintech hub. And so I approached him about creating a biopharma organization. 22 conversations and iterations later, we came up with the idea of a cell and gene therapy CDMO. Started that in 2019, quickly grew the business to 400 people, and 350,000 square feet of GMP and support space, doing plasmid vector cell therapy. And ultimately, a Center for Breakthrough Medicine was purchased by SK Pharmteco, and we're now part of a 2,000 person organization. I actually exited CBM/SK Pharmteco in October, and I'm now running a company that I started called AG Capital Advisors, which advises investors, private equity firms, and venture capitalists on their pharma services investments. And because I'm so well networked in that community, I now have companies coming to me and saying, can you introduce me, or do you know who we can raise capital from? So I'm also helping on that side as well. But entered from real estate, financial services, and many other industries, and really learned during COVID. I was very blessed to be able to attend every conference around the globe from my living room. And so I got to learn a lot very quickly, not just online and from Googling and whatnot, but reading a ton and talking to experts.
I mean, that's quite a lot to fit into quite a short quite a short period of time.
Definitely.
What was in those kind of earlier days, and maybe even just out of university and college and things like that, but what was your approach to failure? Like, how did you see failure?
That's a great question. I think I grew up exposed to failure. Just my parents were doctors, but they were also entrepreneurs and had experienced trials and tribulations with cash flow at certain points in their lives, and going through different periods like that, you really see how someone has resilience and comes out of situations. And I think I've also been just genetically a bit of a risk taker. And I, generally speaking, if anyone knows me, I have less of a fear factor when it comes to things. So taking risks and making bold moves and knowing that failure is just part of the process. And actually, you learn more from failure than from your success. And so I embrace that. But it doesn't mean I still don't have that little voice in my head that's always like, are you sure you want to do this? So it's calculated risks.
And then do you have a particular behind the eight ball story that kind of demonstrates what an experience where that might have occurred, essentially, that failure has been real? Yeah,
I mean, there's a bunch of examples. I fail all day, every day at various little things. But I think a big example is when we started CBM, it was tough to raise capital. We bootstrapped the first $20 million. And when we got our first round at 350, it was tough getting there. There were times when we were worried we weren't going to make payroll, had to make really hard decisions with regard to people and joint venture partnerships and client execution and who we could do work with. And so I think maybe it's not a great example of a specific failure, but I think just staying focused and keeping your eye on the prize and knowing that it's never a linear path. You're going to have disappointments, but as long as you're passionate about what you do, it's a salient business model, and you have support, you will get there. And so for me, it was about just having that resilience and knowing that we were going to be successful and to keep at it.
I mean, you've spoken about resilience, like kind of looking at your parents, but also yourself as well. Have there ever been points in this kind of long and quite convoluted journey that hit lots of different industries where actually there may have been a checkpoint where you've gone, no, do you know what? Enough, I quit.
Yeah. I mean, anytime I leave a company, I've been fired from jobs. And candidly, it's a lesson like maybe I shouldn't really be doing this. Maybe it's not the right fit. Or candidly, even better, in particular for the women out there, you want to align yourself with an organization that has a culture that you feel part of the team. And so for me, like before business school, I worked at Merrill Lynch as a banker, and I thrived there. It was a wonderful environment, a culture that really aligned who I was as a person. And then the bank that I went to after business school, very much different. And so it was the same job, but a different culture. And then that termination, I was terminated from that job. That termination ultimately led me to starting my own private equity firm within months. And it was right after September 11th, and I was living in Manhattan. And I started a company in the middle of the 9/11 crisis. And so that failure, being terminated from that bank, ultimately led to an incredible success. And creating an organization with a culture that I could feel a part of, and create an organization that motivated other people like me to be successful.
I mean, you've mentioned about the about looking at culture and your kind of approach there, but are there any other lessons that you've learned from failure that perhaps have stuck with you and kind of led you to more successful ventures and experiences?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's little things too. Like, so there's a financial crisis in 2008, and it started in the real estate world, which was where I was working. And what you realize is I spent a lot of my time negotiating agreements. And a lot of time as a young professional, you're like, oh, that's never going to happen, that fine print and this particular caveat and and you realize, oh my goodness, all of these things are actually happening. And so knowing to have protections and legal documents when there is a market crisis or a rare unexpected event may occur, you really want to have protections in place that allow you to minimize your downside and maximize sort of what your future success can be.
And what would be your advice to somebody perhaps looking at their like maybe first experience of failure, or even looking at this space having failed from somewhere else? Like where would what would be your advice?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think there's a lot of ways someone can make a mistake. And my general advice is never be the smartest person in the room, or leave that room. You're in the wrong room if you're the smartest person. I also think hiring people that are smarter than you, better than you, that can supplement your activities and let them thrive. Do not micromanage people. You figure out what you're great at and you run as hard and fast at doing that as you can. And trust your partners and your employees to help you with execution. I would say that's the first thing. And I think the second thing is just always be learning and growing. I've never been afraid to sort of jump into a new experience and learn a tremendous amount. It was about supplementing my education and you know, I think if you have a general foundation of business knowledge and financial acumen and understanding what generates margin and valuation, can get you a very long way regardless of industry. So it's just having that good business acumen can take you a long way.
And what do you think would be, we've kind of talked about jumping into new experiences and kind of, I suppose, satiating your curiosity there and your need for new learning. But what might be next for you personally and professionally? What kind of new experiences would you be seeking out possibly for the first time as we look forward?
That's a good question. I don't know about, I've done so many things, like what haven't I done that would be first? No, I'm sure there's plenty of things. But look, for me, there's adjacent and surrounding sub-industries within the biopharma space that I maybe haven't been exposed to on a day-to-day level, but know what it takes to make something commercially successful. And so applying that commercial success factor to new sub-industries is going to be really fun for me, because it's like 50% old, hit the ground running, really optimize everything, and 50% stretch and grow and learn, which is really what keeps me motivated and integrated into a project.
And if you're looking at that, how does your lens of failure change as you build experience and as you kind of keep going? If we look at how you kind of felt early in life and being that kind of entrepreneurial like energy, is that something that gets significantly more progressive as you get older, or something that maybe gives you a little bit more fear?
I mean, I think there's a couple things that give you a foundation for feeling comfortable with taking a little bit of risk here and there. I mean, obviously financial is a big part of it. When I graduated school, I mean, it was very financially motivated. And I think when I got into my late 20s, early 30s, even into my mid 30s, I became increasingly motivated by mission-driven businesses. Like, how is this making the planet better, or humanity better, or making human health improved? And so I now am highly motivated by that, and that feeds my soul much more than any financial metric would. But now, keep in mind, I'm now able to pay the mortgage and feed, so you're able to take just a little bit of risk and do things maybe that are special for you in different ways that you maybe hadn't done in the past. Yeah.
Fabulous. I think that is pretty much all of my questions. Do you have any final thoughts on failure, or even just learning lessons from failure?
I think just look, no one's going to invite you. You have to take the bull by the horns. We're in Texas. Grab those reins, baby. And you really just have to be responsible. No one's going to save you. You have to be responsible for yourself. Know that your success depends on your own the work ethic that you put into it. So find something you're passionate about, work hard, and you will be successful.
Fabulous. Well, thank you very much for joining me.
Yeah.
And everybody else.
Thanks for having me.